Hello my friends, welcome back. So this video is going to be kind of all about Prism with a couple different other things splashed in. But if you noticed in my last video, I didn't really talk about the Prism matchup that much. In fact, I kind of underestimated how much of a threat Prism would be for our Iyslander deck. So a lovely viewer by the name of Focus Flute left a comment and said, "Hey man, what the heck do we do against Prism?" So that kind of, I had not considered how much of a threat Prism would be. So I sat down, I took a long, hard look at the deck, and I realized we need some 6+ attack action cards to pop Phantasm. So what I did was I cut a bunch of the underperforming cards, stuff that I just never really liked having, and added some 6+ attack action cards. So we'll kind of address these things. We'll break down why I included all of these cards, and if there are other matchups where we might consider including these, which is a very big if. But anyways, to start things off, if you remember in the last video, we had the we had 2 copies of the blue Cadaver's Contraband. So this card is very cool in my opinion. I would not hesitate to say that this is pretty core for dealing with draconic stuff as Iyslander, because you're kind of in-game, in-goal kind of win condition is 9 times out of 10 going to be Frost Hex, and then giving them just a ton of frostbites they can't deal with, and just overwhelming them and pinging them to death with arcane damage from the Frost Hex. So draconic heroes have access to a card called Thaw. Thaw is very no bueno for us. So Thaw says they can blow up our Frost Hex, or they can blow up hypothermia, they can blow up all this stuff. All these afflictions or anything ice related, frostbites, all that fun stuff, or unfreeze equipment, or unfreeze a card, which is also important. But 9 times out of 10, Thaw is going to be used specifically to target Frost Hex. So Frost Hex is one of our key cards. We don't want to go without it. So basically, to destroy Frost Hex with Thaw, they have to banish it from their graveyard, which means they can never do it again this game. So our card Frost Hex just goes back to our graveyard. So there are plenty of ways to recur cards from graveyards. There's Remembrance and stuff like that, but I think Cadaver's Contraband is the best way to do it, especially for us. So nobody ever expects the attack action cards. So they're all planning their turn out. They're probably not going to block anything, and then here comes 6 attack out of nowhere, and on hit gets them their biggest threat back. Their Frost Hex is coming back. So I think that Cadaver's Contraband is definitely going to be included in Iyslander against Draconic heroes. But in the past, I considered maybe running the blues because it still has a breakpoint of 4, which is 2 cards or a card and equipment. And most of the time, if you're playing against a wizard, you're not going to be running a lot of blocking equipment. You're going to be running Arcane Barrier. Most Arcane Barrier stuff does not have a block to it. So yeah, so Cadaver's Contraband is going to be super nasty against those Draconic heroes because they're not going to expect it, and it's going to come in for 6, and they're either going to have to decide to lose half their hand, or you get your biggest threats back. Now, you don't always have to target Frost Hex. If Frost Hex is in your graveyard and you have Cadaver's Contraband, you probably want to attack with Cadaver's Contraband, trying to get that Frost Hex back. But you can also target any non-attack action card in your graveyard. Channel Lake Frigid is a good one in case, there's lots of stuff that you can use to recur all these cards and kind of pick up where you left off, if you would. But yeah, I really like this card. At 6+ attack, the red one pops Phantasm, which is also important to note. So you kind of get that dual purpose here, right? You can pop Phantasm coming from both Prism and Dromai, and then you also have it for use against your lovely Draconic friends. Erase Face is kind of everybody's new favorite card, right? It's the new Command and Conquer. It's not. It's good, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly on the same power level. So Erase Face is similarly statted to Command and Conquer, with the only exception that it has 2 block instead of 3. Now this is very important. We saw how much of an impact the ban for the 3 block Earth card for Starro, that made a big deal, made a big impact. But 2 block, for us it's not going to matter because you're only going to run this card against Prism, and it's literally only going to be used to pop Phantasm. with the exception that it does turn off Luminars pretty much straight out of the gate. If you hit with this card, it makes all of their auras and cards no longer illusionist. So Luminar specifically says that your illusionist auras have additional effects. So it's kind of good if they have a big stack of auras. But then again, if it's like spectral shield tokens or whatever, if you hit and they have spectral shields, it's going to blow them up anyways. So, I think honestly, I might cut these cards for Command and Conquer. But I just threw them in here because they're new. And we like playing with new shiny things, right? Speaking of new and shiny, this card, I'm really, really liking Vandals Fighting Spirit. I think this is unironically one of my favorite cards out of Uprising. It's so cool because it's generic, which is great out of the gate. Like every class, every hero can play it. So I'm really interested in throwing this in some of my merchant decks. But I include the yellow here because the yellow is still a 6 attack action card. Unfortunately, it only blocks for 2, but you're not going to be blocking anything other than things with Phantasm anyways with this. So once again, you're never going to actually attack, or almost never going to actually attack with any of these cards. They are literally only used for popping Phantasm, with the exception of the Cadaver's Contraband on hit trigger, like I talked about. And Erase Face is, you can use it against like Viscerai or something, where it really, really shuts off their whole game plan. But it's really cool though with Fandals Fighting Spirit. When you attack or block with it, which the blocking is really all that really matters for us. If you have less health than your opponent, which as Iyslander you start with 4 less health, and you're gonna be probably taking a lot of damage to set stuff up, you're gonna have less health than them. You gain 1 health, and this triggers even if you pop Phantasm with it, because it is a triggered thing when you declare it as a defending card. It happens. So even if you pop Phantasm with this, you're still gaining a life. So honestly, we might take the Erase Face out and put in more Fandals Fighting Spirits. Or we might, swap some of this other stuff around. I might take out this like yellow Sigil of Permafrost or something and put in another yellow Fandals Fighting Spirit. The only downside is these 6 plus attack action cards are only good against Phantasm-based decks. So really only good against Illusionist. So that's why I didn't put in more. But I still think that that gaining 1 life will probably make a difference in some games. Winter's Grasp. This is an interesting pick, right? So on paper, this card doesn't look like it does anything for us. But I had to cut some non-attack action cards to get these attack action cards in the deck. And unfortunately, I ended up having to cut some ice cards. Specifically, I cut the blue Arctic Incarcerations. So that kind of took away some of our ability to Ice Fuse. So these cards are literally only here for Ice Fusion and to pop Phantasm. This one does block for 3 if you absolutely need to block with it and it's not a Phantasm attack. But, most of the time you're just going to be popping Phantasm with this and fusing, like I said. Now, kind of touching on some other things in the deck, specifically against Prism or just things that I wanted to note. I took a couple copies of Exposed to the Elements out. I left 1, but this card just underperformed for me, honestly, in Iyslander. It's an instant, so it has no block, which is kind of awkward to play around. It does pitch for blue, which is nice, but it costs 2 to play it. So, and then you have to fuse it as well. So, honestly, most of the time when I played this card, I was either trying to do something with this like weird hand, or so basically you're tying up 3 cards to block with. So this card is gone, your pitch card is gone, you cannot block with either of those. Your fusing card, you have to keep it in your hand until you fuse this card. So say they're coming at you for a lot of damage, and if you play this right off the bat, like on their first attack, most of the time what you're going to get out of this is you're paying 2 resources, you're playing a card from hand, and you're revealing a 3rd card for them to just pay 2 resources, and it fizzle. So that's essentially 2 cards and some information for 2 resources. It's not worth it. So, this card is still Ice Fuses, which is useful for like Amulet of Ice and Insidious Chill. So there are still use cases for it, but honestly, 3 was too many. I think even 2 is too many. The only kind of use you get out of this is blowing up their arcane barrier, which is awesome when it happens, but I prefer more consistency, and this was not consistent enough in my opinion. But I left one in for blowing up like Crown of Seeds or Arcane Barrier or even Quell. You can use it for Quell. I took out one of the Time Snap potions. This is another card that was underperforming for me. The kind of main combo, like I said, is Encase and Freezing Point with Time Snap Potion. So if you don't have those two cards in hand, there's not a whole lot of anything else that kind of feels good to play with the Time Snap Potions. So really and truly, you're probably never going to use this card. So I took out one. I left one in just because the Encase Freezing Point combo is so potent. But, I mean, I might consider cutting that one as well. I probably will cut the Yellow Sigil Permafrost as well, just because I don't want so many. These cards kind of fill the same niche as like the attack actions that you're going to block with. You don't want too much of your deck to be weighted on defense. You want to have enough damage to be able to do something, right? So I think I might cut some of these cards, probably the Sigil of Parapets and the Yellow Sigil Permafrost, and throw back in some more like damage, or at least maybe the Arctic Incarcerations, because that enables you to use Waning Moon and gives them 2 Frostbites. You know, we'll consider. I'll keep play testing, figuring out what fits here. I just don't want too much of our deck to be. I don't want us to have to make any awkward choices, like including defense reactions or blocking attack actions against other wizards. That's kind of thing with deck building, right? You have to make sacrifices, but you don't want to make so many sacrifices that some matchups will be good and others will be terrible, which is kind of the trap I fell in before because I didn't account for Prism as much as I should have. So take that with a grain of salt. Probably taking some of these cards out, but I'll let you guys know. I'll probably write a sideboarding breakdown guide for this, and I'll include the link for this version of the deck in the comments on this video. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say. The only other thing, Hypothermia and Blizzard are going to be phenomenal against Prism, specifically Hypothermia, right? So Hypothermia says attacks you control can't gain go again. This is great. So especially against Aura Prism, they go to ping you for 1 damage with one of their auras. You play this from Arsenal. Bam, they get a Frostbite, first of all. Secondly, that attack, you know, it doesn't have to be an attack action card, but that attack can't gain go again, so their turn is done. They get 1 ping, you know, that's it. This card is just, I think it's your best friend against Prism, all things considered. One other thing to notice, Scour, you can play Scour against Prism. You can blow up their Spectral Shields, any of their other auras, because they do have some the Everfest auras are 0-cost auras. But another cool thing, if you do manage to get an Ice Eternal out and create just a bunch of Frostbite tokens under your opponent's control, you can actually use Scour and target the Frostbite to deal arcane damage to your opponent. So if you think they're about to play something and get rid of all these Frostbite tokens, but you still want them to get hit with the damage, you can hit their Frostbite tokens with Scour and burn them for however many Frostbites they have, as long as you have resources for it. So that's kind of cool to think about in other matchups as well. But yeah, that's the deck. That's the kind of the rundown against Prism. A couple other things I want to note for anyone who is still watching. So I did finish the pistol for Alpha Investments. Get some blue like weather. I did some like weathering effects on it. I got it nice and rusty looking. I think it looks really good. It came out really good. So now I have 2 pistols. But so we're gonna give that to Alpha Investments, as well as probably a set of Centauri Sabers and also Anathos, the big Guardian Hammer. I'm going to make a full-size version of that. I've decided that's going to happen. I'll probably make another video on like how to make it. I'll have to modify the files a lot as well, because I have a very particular kind of way of making it in mind. And then another video that's going to be coming out pretty soon is one of my buddies was actually really lucky. Well, 2 of my buddies were really lucky in some of the Uprising pre-release events we went to, and he managed to get Fabled as well as a couple of the Marvel Invocations and some other cool stuff like that. So he graciously let me his trade binder. So we're gonna take a look at some of those cards as well as some. I opened a legendary. I've got some other cool stuff. We're gonna show you some of the cool stuff from Uprising for any of you guys who are excited to open it. So, anyways, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did get something out of it, I'm glad to hear that. If you did not, let me know what I could have done better. Let me know what I missed out on. Okay. I really appreciate your comment. Like I said. And just please feel free to let me know your thoughts on any of this stuff. Please let me know what I can do better, and if there's more content you guys want to see. If you haven't subscribed, I really appreciate it. All of my subscribers, it's wonderful. I'm up to 11 subscribers now, which is great. So, anyways, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It really means the world to me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one.